Hello, and thank you for joining us for the KREM 2 News Week in Review. I'm Cody Proctor. Each weekend, we walk you through the headlines from the past week in the Inland Northwest. Let's get started with one of the biggest news stories of the past few days.
And this is a small community here, and we love our town, but you never know what's going to happen.
In a town of about 3,000 people.
Safety first.
St. Mary's, Idaho's Board of Trustees is now implementing a new policy aimed at protecting the future generation while on school property next year.
Moving on to number 9, board policy number 5900, concealed carry firearms on school property,
which allows select district members with an enhanced concealed weapons license through the state of Idaho to carry concealed weapons on school grounds. Staff members would have to apply through the district, then be screened and interviewed by local law enforcement as well as the Board of Trustees and the superintendent. Once approved, those selected employees will go through 40 hours of training on topics like de-escalation and threat assessment. The policy states these weapons should either be on the approved district member's person at all times or in a district-approved lockbox. This has been something the district has been working towards for months.
I think there's enough people in the school district that are going to make sure that it's a safety concern and, things are done correctly.
Local parents are now weighing in on the policy and what it means for their students next school year.
It's kind of an unfortunate thing that we have to even think about it, but I love the idea that our kids will be protected and safe.
Knowing we've been hearing a lot of stuff going on in the United States, and we have to put a stop to it. So I'm all for it.
I feel like in some ways it's a good idea, but other ways I'm kind of skeptical and I'm scared a little bit.
Parents also expressed off camera that it's a bad idea in the first place, regardless of training. We did reach out to the district superintendent as well as the Board of Trustees for comment, but they refused the interview. The superintendent of the district sent KREM 2 a press release about the safety this policy, along with other new features like two-door buzz-in entrances and surveillance cameras, will bring to the district, saying in part, "Our buildings won't look attractive to an intruder and they'll move on past the SMSD schools." The policy was approved Monday night in a 4-0 vote, as well as a sub-policy outlining the application process, detailing how inexperienced carriers would need to have been employed by the district for at least 2 years before applying to carry, and any gunfire on school grounds, whether intentional or accidental, will be reported to law enforcement.
In continuing coverage this week.
It has been nearly a year since Janet Mann was hit and killed by a driver turning at a red light here at the intersection of Brown and Main. And just down the street from here, city leaders unveiled new traffic safety measures aimed at curbing these traffic deaths.
3, 2, 1.
It's a simple change that Spokane leadership says is a sign of their dedication to saving lives.
We're on Main right now, and just a few blocks away from us is where tragically Janet Mann was killed by a turn on red.
Mann's death in June led to several pedestrian safety initiatives. The newest unveiled Wednesday, a rule that could roll out across downtown. For now, though, on Main and Post, you can no longer turn on a red light. A welcome signal of progress for Eric Lowe, who first noticed Spokane's street safety issues as a new dad.
I bought a bike trailer when he was a toddler, and we quickly realized how dangerous our streets were.
He founded Spokane Reimagined, envisioning safer roads and more public transport options. He's happy with the no turn on red, but thinks the city can go further to curb traffic deaths through infrastructure changes like squeezing down Spokane's wide roads.
It gives them the feeling of being on a highway.
Speeding and other factors that have led to rising traffic deaths since the pandemic. Data he's been analyzing and mapping.
It's really difficult to sit down and go through that because you see a lot of scary information when you lay it all out.
Mayor Lisa Brown says last year Spokane saw a record 20 traffic fatalities. In the first month of 2025, 6 people have died, including 2 who were walking.
We don't want to meet or exceed last year's record. That's unacceptable.
Spokane will also install more traffic cameras and staff 4 traffic officers by next month.
I'll announce here today that we are reinstituting a traffic safety and education unit. You will see motor officers out there. Their full-time job is to be out there and enforce traffic law.
3 more officers will focus on DUI enforcement and stop by bars to prevent drunk driving. The city is also looking beyond prevention. A new traffic fatality work group will be set up to review these deadly collisions and recommend more safety upgrades. Shannon Mowdy, KREM 2 News.
Well, yeah, over the last few months, the Spokane Parks and Spokane Public Schools, they've been in constant communication, forming a plan they call Together Spokane. Ultimately, it's a mission they say will maximize taxpayer dollars for those who live here in Spokane. In terms of what Together Spokane entails, well, this November, the Parks Department has a levy. SPS has a bond. If voters approve both, there's several projects the two would begin working on or improving. That includes right here at Dwight Merkel. An expansion would utilize the former Joe Albee site, creating 6 additional lighted rectangular fields that would equate to 14 multi-use fields for soccer, baseball, lacrosse, and more.
We need every kid every day off of their screens, out of their homes, doing something in real life. It's never been more important for kids.
And so when we look at the mission alignment between Parks and Recreation and Spokane Public Schools, it is a natural fit.
So SPS says it makes sense for them with this partnership as they continue to push to keep students active in sports and extracurricular activities. Both sides spoke on the possibilities of tournaments, access for all ages, and recreations. As for the cost, homeowners can enter their property value into the Together Spokane tax calculator. Ultimately, Spokane Parks and Recreation is proposing a $240 million 20-year levy, and Spokane Public Schools is proposing a $200 million 20-year bond. If both pass this November, they say more than 200 projects would be possible, like a Dwight Merkel expansion. But together, if they were able to pass this as a unit, they would also be able to work on more than 30 of those extra projects together, and those wouldn't be a reality individually.
As we go to break, here's a check of your weekend forecast. Welcome back to the KREM 2 News Week in Review. It's been a busy week across the Inland Northwest, and we want to help you catch up on some of the stories you might have missed.
The fire danger may be low for now, but the need for fire and medical resources remains high.
Over 83.7% of our call volume is EMS.
At Spokane County Fire District 8 Chief Lonnie Rash, according to him, their call numbers are only expected to get bigger as people move to the area.
We responded to 4,209 calls in 2024, which again is up 15% than what we've been responding to year over year in the last 4 or 5 years.
Fire District 8 covers a big area south of Spokane, including Moran Prairie, Glen Rose, and Valley Ford, where the district's headquarters are located. With the majority of their calls medical related, the fire district's asking voters to help by passing their Proposition 1 EMS levy. If passed, the proposition would restore the EMS levy from 29 to 50 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, an amount they haven't asked for from voters since 2000.
When it gets below 30 cents per thousand, we want the citizens to understand that we do have a need, as well as we don't want them to take off a huge bite. We don't want to come to our citizens when we're at 10 cents per thousand and ask them for a large amount of money.
The department says the money would help replace aging medical equipment and buy a smaller vehicle for EMS calls. It would also allow them to hire more staff, so there's a paramedic at each of their 4 stations. Right now, they rotate paramedics between some of their fire stations.
Our goal is to get to you within about 4 minutes, whereas the ambulance isn't required to be to 10 or 15, sometimes in the further out areas, 20 minutes. So I think that's why it's super important that we get that EMS levy so that we can have those paramedics to our citizens sooner.
Ballots for the EMS levy are due next Tuesday, April 22nd.
I was here at the Spokane Valley DOL all afternoon, and at about 3 o'clock, the line for walk-ins was just over an hour, and most of the people in line were there to get the enhanced ID.
Now serving 218 at counter 12.
Long lines here at the DOL are because TSA will now require a passport, military ID, tribal ID, or enhanced ID or driver's license.
For your enhanced, we are going to look for additional documents.
The difference between an enhanced ID and a regular ID are the documents required. You must have proof of identity, proof of citizenship, and proof of Washington state residency.
We like to go to Italy.
Lisa is going through the process today, but it took her a few tries to get it right.
Just be sure you check the list, because I've made a couple trips here, not having all the information I needed.
And this college student is here to make sure she can get home for her brother's graduation.
Yeah, my parents had to come up to my college to give me all my documents.
Washington DOL says as of April 1st, 29% of Spokane County has an enhanced ID. That's slightly higher than the statewide 27%. For Lisa and a lot of Washington residents, it's peace of mind knowing they can keep the travel plans they love.
I'm good for 8 years. That's a nice feeling.
We're exactly 3 weeks away from that deadline, and this specific office says they've got appointments booked out several weeks, so come sooner rather than later. In Spokane Valley, Caitlin Galloway, KREM 2 News.
Hello, I'm Cody Proctor. Thank you for joining us here on KREM 2 News. You're watching the Week in Review, where we bring you some of the biggest news stories of the past week.
From Rosalia down to Colfax and all across the Palouse, a dispute has been stewing because of these wind turbines. Now that the developer is blowing past local leaders and wants to get what they want by going higher up.
The Harvest Hills Wind Project is by all accounts divisive in Whitman County.
This is one of the most unique areas in the whole world. And to put an industrial wind complex in the world's best farmland for dry land farming, it's a travesty. It's absolutely horrendous.
Save the Palouse, a group with over 3,500 signatures against the development, says the project will have various impacts on the scenery and environment of Whitman County.
The plants are just as good as here as over there, 5 feet. They didn't hurt the ground at all.
While one generational farmer says the turbines he put on his land 12 years ago have increased his income, his farming yield, and he says it has not ruined his land, but helped it.
The noise that you hear right now is about as loud as they'll get.
The long-going disagreement recently escalated into a contentious meeting. Harvest Hills then wrote a letter that says they need to move on and up, declaring they will move past local level government and work with the state on permits because no progress is being made.
No progress, I don't think, is entirely accurate. We committed to this process and we're going to finish it.
Whitman County also made clear that moving forward, there'll be security at meetings.
And so I apologize to everybody that happened, and we'll make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Now, if Harvest Hills goes through the state's Energy Council, opposing sides are not totally sure what will happen next.
But I think, number one, the county needs to get our wind code reasonably set up to protect the citizens here. And if that's not adequate for Harvest Hills, then so be it.
How do they expect to meet the electrical demands in the future if you don't provide more electricity?
Now, I spoke to state leaders that head these state energy permits, and they say that Harvest Hills still has to go through the pre-application process. So they say there is no exact timeline right now on if this project does get state approval. I'm reporting right here in Whitman County, Regan Gallo, KREM 2 News.
Welcome back. Before we wrap up this edition of the KREM 2 News Week in Review, we want to remind you can get the latest newscasts and weather forecasts anytime on KREM 2 Plus. It's free to watch and download for Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. Now, here's one more story before we go.
I still believe that TV is where people turn when something big happens.
You can see this massive tree
fell right over on top of this mobile home. Agencies and survivors came together here at the fairgrounds for a very different reason.
You know, you can always find something online, you can always find it in the paper, you can always hear it on the radio, but there's something special about TV, and I still believe that. Even as things have changed in 23 years since I started doing this, I still believe that it's where people want to turn to watch what's happening in the world.
It didn't take long at all for those 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts to knock a lot of these wooden art panels directly down to the ground.
I knew that Spokane is where I wanted to be, and so I set my sights on Spokane. KREM definitely brought me home, and it is still home. It is still home. I started as the weekend anchor, and then I started doing more and more investigative reporting. Right off the bat, the strength of this case is in the numbers and in the stories themselves. You know, the Carlton Complex fire in 2014 was one of the first really big stories that I did that I covered for years and years afterward. It was such a privilege to hear their stories, to be able to amplify it and let people know what had happened.
This burned out stick is all that's left of the Welcome to Pateros sign.
I made so many trips to Pateros in Okanagan County. There are still people that I'm friends with who live there that I only know because of what happened. They trusted me to be vulnerable. That was a really special story for me.
Far northeast Washington is home to more wolves than any other part of the state.
There are multiple investigations that we've ended up doing that have changed lives. We opened the door, we turned on the light, and people realized that something that had happened never should have happened. This side of the state so often gets ignored, so often gets forgotten, so often has its needs placed down below everybody else. And that was why we were doing the story, because no matter how much these people shouted from the rooftops that their cattle are being eaten by wolves every other day, it didn't seem to matter. No one was listening. And so we've continued to try to tell that story because it deserves to be heard. And their side, their perspective, their loss is just as important as the people on the other side of the mountains.
I've been talking to a lot of people, many people saying they just can't believe there was that much contamination for that long and that we never knew.
Back in 2017, we realized that the groundwater was contaminated and had been for a very long time. So, you know, my job was to figure out what had happened, because it turned out the Air Force knew about it for a really long time.
We were well past the point of exhaustion, but we kept going and going because we're like, we need to get to a hospital. We need to get help for our baby boy.
Yeah, you do cry. I've cried about lots of stories that we've had to cover. You try to hold it together as much as you can, and you recognize that it's their experience to share, and to let them be able to do that, not to be a distraction, but just to be the person who absorbs what is being doled out, and then go back, have that emotion, break down.
So we're headed up outside of Colville now. So
I think back, I've told thousands and thousands of stories, personal stories, some fun.
All right, we are here on the tarmac at Manas.
They came to me and said, hey, how do you feel about going to Kyrgyzstan and helping deliver treats to troops?
Holy cow.
Boy, that was fun. And I think back, I've told thousands and thousands of stories, personal stories, some fun, some really serious, some painful, and some that just needed to be told because nobody else was telling it. I treasured every moment that I sat here at this desk. It was a privilege, and over the years I kind of just realized this wasn't just my job. This was a special position and privilege that I got to hold on to and take care of for a while. And so I wanted to do that every single day.
Thanks for joining us for the KREM 2 News Week in Review. Be sure to keep it here on KREM 2 for more news throughout the weekend. I'm Cody Proctor. Thanks for watching.